And to make it official, I sealed the envelope and mailed off my $421.06 and my statement of candidacy and sent it off to the Kitsap County Elections Office. So I will be at the top of the list momentarily when the papers list who's running. As of right now, there's nobody else running in that particular race. Again, a small group, but this is, if you will, sort of a reintroduction of James Olsen. Randy's probably right. I don't necessarily need a reintroduction to you people, but there's some truths and some driving home some points that I want to do again so you understand really where I'm coming from. And unlike the good Mr. Romney, who got tagged with being an Etch-a-Sketch guy, I am not an Etch-a-Sketch guy. I'm not trying to reinvent myself. I stand by my positions and stand by them firmly. And my critics will have some fun with that, but I'm not really worried about it. So let me just step back 1 second. Why in the world would someone file for political office? Or in this case, this political office. Having done this before, there's no fool's ignorance saying it's going to be fun. We worked for a candidate one time, and the candidate's wife said she just wanted to have fun. I said, you don't want to run for office if fun is what you're after. The $41,000 a year, that's not a particular allure for me. It's not that $41,000 is inconsequential, but if you talk about the lost income and the time spent going here to Olympia over and over again, until I buy a little green car, that probably just eat up the gas right there. So that's not it. But more, I'm a student of history, and I go back to the Greek city-state of Sparta. I like Sparta a lot. Basically, they're warriors. But one of the things they did, too, having to do with civic involvement, it was required that every Spartan citizen, in those days it was a male and wasn't a slave, was required to be active in the civic forum. And if they weren't, there was a penalty. It was probably death or banishment, ostracism out of the city-state. So everybody took place on that. And I think that's really important. I'm willing to step forward, and I see it sort of as my Spartan duty. A little bit about my background. I grew up in New York State, from Long Island. My hometown was Massapequa, half Jewish, half Italian, affectionately known as Mott's Pizza. It really was. And I may slip back into my Brooklyn accent. I worked my way through college, doing summer jobs at resorts that I can't afford to go back to. They're so expensive to be there. It was an idyllic life. But nevertheless, I did work my way through college. I'm married to one very wonderful woman, Mary Dombrowski. As they say, I clearly married up in that case. We have 4 children. One's a U.S. Army pilot, one's a graphic designer working in New Mexico, and we have 2 daughters who are finishing up their college education. And I entered the Coast Guard in 1972, finished up 30 years later. My work background, I'm not a career politician. Really what I am is a career small business owner, and I've been so for 35 years. I have a real estate investment firm with my wife, and we provide affordable housing with a great deal of difficulty in Kitsap and King County. I'm a hands-on kind of guy. I don't sit in an ivory tower, although at times I like sitting in my ivory tower, but most of the time I work, I dry nails, I roof. See my video, you'll see chainsawing, bucking, probably 5 cords of wood. So I have hands-on experience. Personally, as a businessman, a small businessman, I know the value of money, especially my money. I know how to live within a budget. I have a budget, unlike the Washington State budget, that is not something that's fungible, that can be gimmicked, that you can use, as I like the term, felonious budget gimmicks to call it a balanced budget. So I know to live within a budget. I know how to get a bargain, and I expect that out of the government, limited government that I work with. My operating principle in general in life, if it's not broken, don't fix it. I'm always looking for economical, practical solutions as a businessman, and I expect my government leaders to do the same. I know the destructive force of overregulation and overtaxation in properties, and I just watch every levy, tax levy, parks levy, this and that. it's surprising that anybody can have anything affordable in the People's Republic of Seattle or Bainbridge Island for that matter. I'm an everyman businessman, and I'll defend small business as the spawning ground of private sector jobs. And small businesses eventually can become big businesses and successful businesses. My military background, I very quickly, 30 years service. I retired as a captain as an 06. I've held 5 commanding officer assignments for units of 30 to 180 men and women. My assignments range from port security, command and control, oil prevention, communications, and I was commanding officer of an expeditionary naval coastal, actually a Navy unit. That was quite an experience. But for my experience to be a representative, okay, it's not the military, and no, it's not an investment firm. How does the military apply? Well, in 1995, President Clinton and Al Gore, our illustrious Al Gore, had a plan where they were going to demand for efficiency out of government. And they had something called the GIP, or Government Improvement Act. And they basically told the Coast Guard, hey, get smart, get smaller, streamline, take a look at your core functions, take a look at extra GSA space. So I was a project officer here in the 13th Coast Guard this year. I worked with Rich Saunders. I don't know if you know Rich Saunders from Bainbridge Island, but we affectionately called ourselves the Happy Grim Reapers. It was a tough job. It was a messy job. But in the end, the taxpayers, we went from the federal building, which is AAA office space, top of the federal building. Coast Guard went from 6 floors down to 2.5 floors with the savings. And it didn't mean we fired everybody, but they did things a lot more sensible. And that is a metaphor, or a metaphor is an example of what I want to see happen with the state of Washington. Okay, so, and I was selected by the U.S. Coast Guard Commandant, several commandants, to handle foreign delegation conferences. So I know how to deal with senior people, I know how to deal with junior people. My critics don't know that I can deal with anybody, but I can. And I have really good people skills. I just don't necessarily suffer fools overly gladly. I know how to give orders, and I know how to take orders. Okay, a little bit about my general philosophy of life. This is the shorthand. This is the elevator speech. I'm pro-business, pro-private sector, pro-family, pro-marriage, old-school marriage, pro-military, pro-constitution, pro-small guns, and pro-free speech. Thank you, yeah. So anyway, and no elevators on Bainbridge, but I can practice that, so I have to go to Seattle to do it. I share many of the dreams and the tenets of our fine Tea Party, much maligned, but a very powerful force, and they're flexing their muscle again. So I stand with them and support them and hope for their support. For me, limited government is a key tenet of my philosophy, a constitutional limited government. I'm also concerned about the quality of education in Washington. That's what you're going to hear me say about it. I'm really, really committed to it. When we go on the campaign trail, you can guarantee you're going to get rubber chickens for lunch, and you're going to hear ad hominem. I mean, just vacuous cliches about education. Education is very important, and if the Democrats in Olympia, in control, really placed a value on education, as the courts told them they had to do, they would have done their education from the get-go. The first thing that they balanced, they funded, would be education. Instead, what they do is they make it last. And they come back with all these crazy draconian things that they say that they need to have to get out of it. And you'll see this play out. It was in the paper the other day between Jay, the quitter, Inslee, and Rob McKenna. And you'll see that theme coming back again. I'm a strong believer in private sector solutions, such as Catholic Community Services and other church services providing low-cost, efficient help for the truly needy part of our society. I also believe the family should be the first stop for problem solving, not the state, not the nanny state, not taking away your kids and all that. My community and church are critical to me. I believe in self-reliance and self-control. Watch out, I believe in self-control, but I generally follow through on that. Around the 23rd Legislative District, And I knock at people's doors and say, I'm James Olsen, I'm running for the 23rd Legislative District. And they say, the what district? And I'd say, Washington State is in a dire fiscal crisis. You have to speak in shorthand, and they'd say, what crisis? So the fact that most people don't know where the 23rd Legislative District, if you don't, you're in good company, because most people don't. However, it's a very real entity. The 23rd Legislative District extends from Hansville to the north, down south to the outskirts. I think they just included a couple of new precincts in Bremerton, our very fine Island, Bainbridge Island, over to the Hood Canal Bridge. Population of people within the 23rd Legislative District is 137,000 people. That's a lot of people that you've got to try to speak to. Of course, they're not all voting age. The housing units in the 23rd are 59,000, of which 54,000, 10% of the houses are unoccupied. But that's another story. The square miles that I have to cover, and I can tell you, and Mr. Ron Luke back there, who was working for James Watkins and other candidates last time, we know it all too well. 102 square miles. It's a gigantic. It's a gigantic area. But just let me back up for 1 second. We all know, in your gut, how things are doing in the 23rd Legislative District or Kitsap County in the state of Washington. You know by the number of neighbors you see in foreclosure or underwater and this and that. But a little factoid that I heard recently was that the unemployment in Kitsap County was 11,500. And again, the unemployment figure is a game. It's a game in the sense that it's grossly understated. But that's a fair number of people that are unemployed. Now, for my campaign, I'll step back 1 second. The last time I ran this race, I ran against Ms. Christine Rothfuss. And I was, another gentleman, Republican, entered the race. There was a primary. I was busy making, a campaign, raising, small amounts of money. Ms. Rothfuss spent $125,000 on her primary to secure the spot that she was guaranteed to have, just to sort of shape the environment. And then we did a little cute video, my wife did, and it ended up that I spent 18 cents per vote that I got. I did really well. I prevailed, went forward to the general election. She spent about $8 per vote. So money is not the deciding factor. So what have I been doing for my campaign? Well, as soon as the campaign smoke was cleared, and I was crestfallen that I didn't win last time, I basically locked it up and said, Jim, march on. And for the last 2 years, I've had a near nonstop string of letters to the editor, guest columns, opinion pieces in local papers. I don't know if there's an editor here, but hopefully that doesn't mean that I've let the cat out of the bag. But so anyway, I've had all these pieces in the paper, and the subjects that I've been dealing with are, I think, weighty policy things, and to introduce myself to the taxpayers. And I've dealt with the federal debt, other people's money, dangers of unfunded Washington State public sector pensions. I call for innovation with the ferry, Washington State ferry. There's no reason in the world we have to build Washington State ferries for 25% more in Washington State only. So shipyards or Vital shipyards turn around and give to the Democrats. I mean, it's not right. I stood up for religious freedom. I memorialized the Bataan Death March, decried green crony capitalism. That's the Bainbridge Island Repower, Solyndra, Texas Clean Energy. What I want to do is call your attention to, these are two really important issues. And one is the Referendum 74, and the other is Initiative 1185. So you may not all remember them, but R74 is the one that basically is going to take the so-called gay marriage issue and put it to a vote of the people. And the people will say yes, no. Not complicated. The Washington State Legislature refused to do that when they passed, clearly, a very controversial bill that took them an entire regular session to pass. And they refused to throw it to the people. By the sundown of the day they signed the bill, the governor did, this referendum was already filed. So I have a copy of the referendum there. If you're at all inclined to say you want to let the people decide up or down, please include your signature. They need 122,000 statewide, and I suspect they're going to get them. The other one is Bill 1185, and since I want to take a couple questions, I'll just simply say this is the work of Tim Eyman, and this is the 2/3 supermajority bill that's been passed 4 times since 1990. This most recently was passed as a I-1053 with a 70% vote of the people. And the Democrats, if the Democrats, my quick joke is that they could have an Aladdin's lamp and have one whoosh that the Democrats in Washington State could have, it would be to make Tim Eyman disappear and never see the 2/3 supermajority again. They're gunning for it. They want to take it back. And if it's not passed as early as this January, Washington State will again, if the Democrats still prevail, will be going ahead on a 50% vote. Okay. The final one up, I need your help. I need financial help. I laid out some of the things that I was after. I like the sentence. The lifeblood of my campaign is quite simple. Campaign donations allowing me to run a media and ground campaign. Gas is expensive. I have a huge market. I'll skip the examples of what a little amount of money does, but trust me, signs, obscenely, I get a great deal. Materials, I do black and white. It goes out. I mail them. Postcards, you give me any money, or if you want to, I can send you a nice postcard that basically is just my sign right there. I'll use every dollar wisely and target to the best use. Again, thanks for your attention.